Good morning, and thank you for be able to talk about this topic. I will first say a couple of words, how it came that I worked in Georgia, and then I will try to explain or try to relate how this went on when we worked in Georgia in different towns, and briefly also explain what kind of method we used. So that's what I will do basically another hour. Shall I just continue to talk, or do you do the translation automatically? This is important, so I'll just continue to talk if you don't interrupt me. Now, as often in life, a lot of things depend on coincidence. It's important that I used to be the director of the Department for Group Psychotherapy in Bern and the outpatient clinic. And there I had different groups. Children were able to go to our educational and the psychological center in order to get help according to the problems they had. So we had children's groups where there were children who were expelled at school, had difficulties at school. We had children's group from parents which were going through a divorce. We had groups for juveniles which were having difficulty with violence. So we had a lot of groups, and I was director of this department, and I had about 10 group leaders who worked for me with the different groups. There we had gained the last 20 years a lot of knowledge on how to work with children in groups. These were groups between 8 to 10 children and adolescents. The age range was between 7 to 18 or even 20. So we had all these offers of groups for the region of Bern, surrounding, and the method we developed there was Myhthdrama, and we had gained a lot of experience, me and my colleagues, the last 20 years. So this was actually the starting situation. And then when the conflict in Georgia happened, when Russia kind of invaded Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which when then that actually happened, one of the group leaders in Bern who worked for me, which originally came from Tbilisi and married a Swiss, but was working as a psychologist in my department, one of the group leaders came up to me and said, listen, we're having a tremendous difficulty now in Georgia because we've been invaded, we have this war, and we have all these refugees coming to Batubi, to Gori and Tbilisi, these refugees, children which have been chased out of Abkhazia and of South Ossetia. And why don't we do something? Can't we do something similar, offer group work for all these children who are lost, deprived of their homes and traumatized? Can't we do something in our home country? This was actually the starting point. I thought that, okay, if we can start, we can try to set up groups in the same kind of, offer the same kind of group work, psychotherapeutic group work in Georgia. Now, this, of course, to start with, it was not always that easy. First of all the logistics, and we thought, how do we start these groups? The first step we made is we tried to get funding. You know, in Switzerland, there's a lot of foundations, a lot of money around, which we could actually apply for. So we had to do funding. We had to try to get enough money in order, to provide, to pay for our expenses, in order to, pay for translation work, in order to pay the group leaders in Georgia. So this was the first step. So we had to, then got all this, make these presentations in the foundations in Switzerland. And luckily we got money. We got a lot of money in order to start this group work in Georgia. That was just after the war. The war was 08. So that just afterwards, so we started with this work. Now, the issue was, how do we start these groups? How do we start? And then this was not that easy. So we got some cooperation with the university in Tbilisi, and with their department. So we've had 1 or 2 persons, which were the key persons in order to initiate this project. And then we said, okay, Georgia, then, like you're going through now, was in a terrible state. Tbilisi, the people were desperate. And of course, a lot of people had also financial difficulties. Said, how do we start this group? How do we find the right people? EAP was not present at that time, so it was, or hardly present. So we had to really find a way to get people. So what we did, we went to Tbilisi, which then was difficult to go to because, but we went there, and then we said, we're offering a training course in Myhthdrama to help internal displaced children and adolescents which have been, had to fled from South Ossetia, Abkhazia, but also Chechnya, so refugees from outside. We want people who are motivated. We want people who are dedicated, would be able to work with this group. And then we said, we have to know that they're really determined and they're really ready, because many people would be, and we also said, when they do group work, it's necessary that they're paid. So we set up a scheme where we said, we offer a training course, and the ones who are motivated and do this training course could afterwards set up groups in various regions in Georgia. And from the start off, we said, if the groups will start, they of course will also be paid. For this first training course, we charged. We had to charge something because we said, but not a lot, not a lot. We said, to see that someone is really convinced to do this group work, he always also had to pay us something, a little bit, a small sum. And we made interviews. So I was then in Tbilisi for 3 days. And each day, me and my colleague, with my 2 colleagues, saw about 20 to 30 applicants who were interested in going through the training. And then afterwards, after having seen all these people, we selected, I think there was about 10 or 15, and said, there's the ones who will be open to the training course, which we then will start. So that's how it started. And we said, we want people who are not just interested in a course, but also have some connections, also somehow connections who we could see. They had to present us, where could they start these groups? I mean, how are the connections to political institutions or to the church? Are there any connections to the church or to any other institutions? Because for the start off, we thought it's good to do a course in Myhthdrama, but also we had to be sure that these people which we trained were also kind of the possibility that they really could start something concrete, and so they also had to propose, what would you do? How would you start the group? And they would have to make suggestions. Well, I have connections there, and so on. So that was actually the start. And so there was, we're talking about the year, I think, 09 or 10. So we started with our first initial training. It was great to do that. We found really determined colleagues which were working. It was a bit of a difficulty for us to find enough men, of course, that's understood. And but we had really found very good, competent people who said, we're doing this, and so, which were on various levels. We want to start with this group. Then we started with the first training, and The training we did mainly in Tbilisi, so the training would be 3 days, usually in blocks of 3 days. And we had, I think, I forget about how many, but we had probably 4 blocks. So we had to do really thorough training in how to do group work, because group work is not that easy. And with the drama, you have to be able to choose the right stories. And so that's why we started. So this was the start, and it was actually a kind of cooperation. We call it Nergi project. Nergi in Georgian is flower, so that's where we started. So we started some kind of cooperation between the Swiss Myhthdrama Association and the Georgian Myhthdrama Association. So we founded an association for Myhthdrama in Georgia. This was necessary in order to be able to transfer monies. You can't just transfer it individually, so you had to have some kind of legal. So that's what he did. The purpose of this project was to help children and juvenile which were traumatized in distress in Georgia. That was the purpose. This is Georgia, of course. I don't think I have to tell you that you know it. This is one group of the children we started to work with. So these were mainly children, who had lost their parents, had lost their homes. And although they were still in Georgia, they came from different regions in Georgia. The South Ossetia, of course, is a rural. It's had a lot of wine and drinking, and Abkhazia was just by the sea, by the Black Sea. And they were actually very much identified themselves. And suddenly they were in Tbilisi, and the older children, they were lost there, completely lost. Some of them were then on the streets during the night, on drugs. So these are, the United Nations then built up some camps outside of Tbilisi, between Tbilisi and Gori. They built up camps, but after a while, so the children, the families moved there, but there they were even more lost because they didn't have any homes. They dreamt of going back, but of course it wasn't possible. And often there were just the mothers there, but the mothers were overwhelmed. They had certain programs, but we realized, they were kind of missing out the home. They were missing out the soul of the places. So we know they were, and so we started. Now, to start these groups, there were many different ways. We talked with the government, of course. We talked with the government who was trying to set up something. We realized they had centers. They were trying to build up centers. So we cooperated with them, offering the groups through the center. We talked with other organizations, Maison Verte. That's a French organization was there. And so we tried to cooperate with them. We cooperated with the Swiss embassy, trying to see how they could. We cooperate. There was a minister for Abkhazia in the Georgian government, so we talked with the ministry, made some kind of understanding. So there was a lot of also work on different levels. On the one hand, training them. On the other hand, the political institutional work to help these children. So this is actually the whole background, which was immensely important because, just doing groups is one thing, being trained in group work, but the other issue is how to get that really implemented, how to get to the children which were around, adolescents. That you had to build up some cooperation. So you had to build and talk to different. This is something mostly my colleagues made in Georgia. So we cooperated with them. We went to Georgia probably 10, 15 times. And then these colleagues set up an agenda for us. I said, okay, when you come, you talk to this minister, and then you visit this place, and then you go to Batumi. And then, so it needed a lot of networking, a lot of connection in order to really get this the groups started. So that's the background. We could start with the group, I think, I forget how long ago, but it was probably, it was more than But 10 years ago, 10 even more, then we could really start setting up this group and had these groups going on in the different areas. The groups were offered mainly in Tbilisi, some in Gori, and in Batumi. And so these are the area where you had these groups. The groups were different for different ages. And but basically it was, and in all this group, what we did is Myhthdrama. So now I'll talk about the method we then used. The difficulty is, that these children and adolescents, they were, of course, confused. They were, of course, lost. Many of them were traumatized. These traumas of them showed that they start, getting into drugs, getting lost, were bereaved, but they could not connect yet. A lot of them in the opposite were still living with families, but the families lived in different situations. I don't know how this is exactly in your country, but, they lived with other relatives, maybe. They lived in shelter homes. They lived in kind of soulless places with other families. So it wasn't that easy, for them. And they had some kind of trauma. Now, every child or the different child dealt in a different way with their trauma. Some of them could deal with it very well. They were actually exceeding. They were actually kind of developing more competences. They were kind of strong personalities. Others, they kind of, there was a danger that they kind of dissolved, that the danger after a while, suddenly, they would get in drugs. They would start to lose the motivation. They got lost at school. They would try to, of course, to get some education, but some of them, it was just not able to provide it, especially in Tbilisi. They got into gangs. Some of them got violent. So it was important that these children, adolescents, internal displaced persons, they had different necessities. And so we started these groups, and this was basically, you could imagine, for instance, in Tbilisi, some kind of center, a center for children and adolescents, part of school. So there, the group leaders then would announce that they had these groups for internally displaced children and adolescents where they could join. They offered sessions, which could be last for 2 or 3 hours, and their Myhthdrama was offered. And now, not every child, adolescent who was a refugee is interested in psychological work. Some of them, are completely, occupied with other issues. So we had to kind of also make it, in certain sense, attractive or persuasive. Say, listen, this is something which could help you. The way we did it, there were centers who got to know that they could hear stories, they could play, but also, of course, reflect on what they'd done. So that's where Myhthdrama came in. So these groups, which were then organized and offered, were realms, were places where they could go and listen to a story and join in and do some playful exercises. So this was important because it became attractive. What we experienced with especially traumatized children is that some of them had even lost their capability for play. This was very impressive. When I met these children, of course, I can't talk Georgian, but I was there with colleagues. And so they would explain to me everything, and I would do the translation. But, you could see some of the children, they did not show this playful attitude towards life, which a normal, safe, sane child would. They were there kind of getting into like a desperation or a depression even. So these group leaders had to try to introduce again, what is play? How do you play? and explain games. And this had to, from it start with slow steps. Okay, let's fool around a bit. Let's make a game. So games was very important. And so these children and adolescents knew there someone is offering cool games. In the training we gave to our colleagues, we presented a lot of different possibilities how to do games with it. They had to also try to get into in a mood in order to play games. So this was important. This was more important in Georgia than in the Swiss groups, because in the Swiss groups, usually the children do a lot of games at home, at school, in their spare time. So that was not that of an issue. In Georgia, with these children, we really had to kind of give them a push to start using games again. So in this center, we started this center, and they enjoyed it enormously. It was for me very impressive to see how these children rediscovered what games means, and how to, after a while, being in a group, joining in a group, which there was some kind of joy, some kind of fun. This was enormously important for them. For me, it was really one of the most impressive experience I had when I heard these children laugh again, when I see these children jumping around with a lot of, in English would say, silly games, easy games. This was one important. So the game part, because in Myhthdrama, you always start with a playful game. The other part, of course, in Myhthdrama, which was very important, is that then after presenting games, we present a story. And, so it's not just a group experience, so it's a story. And the story we chose according to the issues, according to the challenges or difficulties or problems they had. So Myhthdrama, as I presented last time, is actually the method we then used for these children. And these Myhthdrama leaders knew how to choose the stories. They knew it couldn't just be Western European stories. The stories had to be applied to the background, to the culture of the children they were working with. So my colleagues there, I think, did excellent work in searching for stories from South Ossetia, in searching for stories which mirror, which could kind of express the feeling of loneliness, the feeling of lost something, but also hope. So we actually developed then a set of stories. My colleagues developed a set of stories which were applicable to Georgia, and which also covered the Georgian background and history. So there, I think, and we also did then one or two conferences at the University of in Tbilisi, which was attended by lots of people. This happened after a while, where we kind of some research was made, even though I'm saying it's continuing, about how to work with Myhthdrama in Georgia, what stories to choose, what the experiences was. We could work together with two professors in Georgia, and then doctorates also made after, I'm talking about after a while, made research and what are the results, what the technique. So it started off a whole a background. So you have to imagine we had then these different groups in Georgia, in Gori and in Batumi, and we trained these group leaders. These group leaders offered these groups, and it became actually then quite acceptable. But we had this whole background where we did research and founding. We found, that working play stories in Myhthdrama, stories which were specially selected, had proven for us then actually a very effective method. And I'm not just saying this out of my head. As I said, this is then also being researched or investigated afterwards by the universities in Tbilisi, so to see what actually the result was. of course, what we did was dealing with trauma. That was important. Is there really, is there some betterment? And for us, to see these juveniles, when they see they were actually getting better, a sign was that they started to go to school regularly, started to learn, started to develop hope, started to set up an own idea about their lives. We also started then to cooperate with Swiss entrepreneurs, which invested monies in Georgia, especially with water. Georgia has a very good quality of water, and one Swiss investor, he invested money there in Georgia, and so we could kind of cooperate with them. So the older ones, the 18, 19-year-olds, they then could find a job there. So this was also part of the whole Myhthdrama project. Our project was not just training. Myhthdrama, with, I think some of you know, and the last time when I was in Kiev, I kind of explained it a little bit. Myhthdrama is a Jungian-based method. It's a Jungian psychology, which uses story, myth as a mean to connect with, to give bereaved and traumatized children a possibility to express their anger, their emotions, and then in certain steps help the children to find a personal solution to get on. That's what Myhthdrama is about. Myhthdrama is not a training program. Myhthdrama is actually a program which starts off with the subjective realities of the children and tendencies. So on one hand, they really, through actually playing Myhthdrama, imagination phases, can actually connect to and voice their concerns and issues. On the other hand, by the end of the Myhthdrama program, they can actually, get to find out. Now, briefly, I'll explain you what the setting of Myhthdrama is. I did that last time I was in Ukraine, but just as a reminder, basically Myhthdrama works with different phases. So Myhthdrama is a group method where you work with juveniles, adolescents, and also grown-ups, of course, with a certain structure. The first phase is also issue. The issue in Georgia was clear. There it's about surviving from the war, dealing with the traumas they had in the war, and trying to find a new way and trying to cope with the very unpleasant situation. So that was the issue. That was clear, and that was stated also by the Myhthdrama leaders in Georgia. They addressed it. Then, of course, play, what I've explained to you. Play was extremely important in Georgia, as I said, because these children had often lost a sense of play. And then the story is always related by heart, directly. This is something which was so important in training. So the Myhthdrama leaders we trained in Georgia, they had to also kind of get into storytelling. So we helped them in order to find enough confidence, find enough getting some experience in relating a story to a group of children, adolescents, and connecting with them through the story. Because as I said, stories have to be told at heart. Stories have to be chosen according to the specific needs of the group. So we also had to train the group leaders in how do they find out what the needs are? How do they find out? And the stories are not told to the end, but we leave out the children to imagine an end. That's where fantasy comes in. So they have to fantasize, and that also is important. Some of these children, they were in a depressed mode and had very great difficulties in fantasizing. Imagination, we really had to help them to start to imagine. And but it was impressive to see that most of the children and adolescents, after a while, when they had realized they have a safe place, when they had realized life goes on. When that real that there's still hope, they start to imagine again. And what they imagined then, of course, had to be expressed. And that's where pictures and drama came in. They started to draw pictures about what the endings they found out. They started to do some more drama. You actually, on the internet, on our homepage, you can see a group of Georgian children who did their own drama and about their situation. It's very impressive what they actually invented. And so pictures, drama, so it has to become palpable and it has to become presentable. This is awesome. And so the pictures, these pictures, then out of these pictures, and this is a difficult step, that's where actually the knowledge in psychology interpretation comes in. These pictures were the basis for new insights, ideas, conclusions for which the children could draw for their individual situation. So there was a transference work. It had to be transferred from what I did in pictures, the solutions which these pictures indicated, this to their real life situations, which led them to concrete change. Concrete change is something, what do they do with in their lives as a result? So this is the mythodramatic circle. It ends with theory. It ends with giving the children and adolescents a bite, something to drink, and so, which was, which was also very important that they get some food. Some of them were really in a problematic state, didn't have a lot of food. So this is basically, the session would last for 2 to 3 hours and be offered at different places in Georgia, and it would. And this is what we did. We did then several groups. They're still working. They're still going on in Georgia. Of course, now a lot of these refugees children are older because the conflict is. So it became now something usual. Currently, there's a training in Batumi University. We're starting probably next spring. I'm probably going to Georgia to see how this whole thing is. Because of COVID, the whole project was stalled for 2 years, but now we're recontinuing. And it's been now included Myhthdrama in other areas, in normal group work. And so that's actually, but we're still funding some groups and some payment. We're funding also training programs by the University of Batumi. So that's basically Myhthdrama we're doing in Georgia. As I said, we started 12 years ago, I think more than 12 years ago. It's now become, I think, one of the methods, and it's been picked up by different universities. There's several doctor research programs have been done. It was in Tbilisi on Myhthdrama. And I think that's what I have to say. So here's again, the funding was important, selecting the right therapist, training, that was very important too. And then cooperation between IAAP and our association was there we had a lot of cooperation, which was very helpful then to start this. And here finally you have the group of Myhthdrama trained psychologists in Georgia, which are still working for us. Most of them are still working for us. Some of them joined us even in other countries to teach Myhthdrama, like China and Taiwan. And so, yeah. So this is basically what I have to say. So I don't know, as I don't see you, unfortunately, maybe someone has questions or some remarks to make. Hopefully we're doing this. Yeah, thank you.
Дякую, Алан, дуже дякую за таке структуроване представлення досвіду в Грузії. Нам теж це корисно, щоб уявити собі подальші кроки. Я запрошую всіх до питання, до відгуків. Будь ласка.
Можна, Оксана?
Так, будь ласка.
Я би хотіла дуже вам подякувати за ту частину вашої розповіді, яка стосувалася саме підготовчої роботи. Бо це така начебто рутина, яку ніхто не бачить, яку не бачать фахівці з дуже гарним своїм психотерапевтичним фахом. Але ця робота є вирішальною. Чи буде впроваджений той чи інший метод, та чи інша програма. І саме від цього, від вміння налагодити зв'язки, вміння знайти колег, вміння знайти мову, якою можна пояснити ваші інструменти над роботою, над якими ви працювали і багато років. А пояснити їх треба людям, які, можливо, перший раз чують слово психоаналіз чи щось таке. Це дуже-дуже великий шлях, і я вдячна вам за те, що ви зробили цей шлях, бо у вас вже є той досвід, да, як це можна робити, як знаходити оцю дорогу до фахівців, а потім ще і до залучення людей, яким ви надавали допомогу. Це такі ланки в цій роботі, які в Україні теж складні, бо є розрив між тими, хто потребує допомоги, і тими, хто має фах надати цю допомогу. Дякую вам. Велике.
Дякую, Оля. Да, це дуже важливо. Да, такий комплексний підхід. Алан?
Yes, I think I'm glad that message came through. You know, I was invited to present my experience in the work with Georgia. And I think, you know, when you want to start a new program, it's important to find people who collaborate. And my role was, when I was going to Georgia, you know, I couldn't do groups myself because I don't talk Georgian. It was a role to really get it established. And you have to cooperate. And I think it's this message came through because that's what I wanted to concentrate. Thank you very much. And I think
Модератори, виключіть Олену Попову, будь ласка.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't get that. No. It's okay now. Yes. No, I think I'm very glad because, you know, the difficulties we might be, especially when we're psychologists, we might be, you know, convinced this is a good method, but you need situations, and it needs a lot of explanation, talking to set it up on a long term. Also, you know, people don't live off bread or honey of air. You know, you also need to get the funding and the monies, and all these things are also very important. So this is something. But in Georgia, we really now it's I think that it's really an accepted method which is used in different by different institutions. It's part of the universitarian training. So I think this you know this I think is important to get it more established. And it's just a flash in the pan. Okay.
Дякую. Наталя, будь ласка.
Да, дякую. Я дуже, перепрошую, вдячна за вашу доповідь. Я вражена тим вашим рівнем, я перепрошую, у мене тут два девайса, мене чутно?
Чутно все. Давайте питання.
Дякую. Я дякую вам за доповідь. Я хочу, якщо можна, повернути той слайд, там, де фази проведення. Можна? Я його не змогла собі занотати.
Це слайд з сеттингом заняття.
Так, дуже дякую. Спасибі.
Наталі, ви хочете просто дізнатися ще раз про структуру заняття, так? Про етапи. Да, ну просто, може, він повторить, які йдуть етапи.
Дуже дякую. Озвучити, так? Озвучити.
just a moment. I'll try to do that technically. This is not there. I don't know where you are now. Do you see me? Bildschirm
Ні,
freigeben.
поки що ні. Ні. Ні, не бачимо зараз.
Not yet, yeah.
Ага.
Ми
А
ж
можливо, ви
зупинили
просто
презентацію, нам
See.
зупинена
назвати ці
презентація,
етапи.
нам треба її тоді заново записати.
Да. Давайте, може, просто так їх можна назвати, ці етапи. Да? Що
Так
перший
це
етап.
буде краще.
Да, просто назвіть їх, не обов'язково показувати слайд, а просто... О, є, все ж таки є.
Okay.
Угу.
Okay. That is actually the way we have the different phases in Myhthdrama. It gives an orientation of group work, you know, that's different phases. So you have different tasks. So in Myhthdrama, you follow some kind of certain steps, but the content of the course is different. Playing is different in every group, story, fantasy, drama. That's, yeah. So this is, shall I say something to it? I don't know. Do you want me to explain it or? Okay.
Дуже дякую.
Достатньо, да?
Да, дякую.
Дякую. Добре, є ще питання? Чи ми вже підемо на перерву?
Okay, thank you very much. And
Thank you very
all the
much.
best.
Да, і будемо...
All the best.
Mm.
Bye-bye.